Everybody, welcome, welcome. This is going to be our fun holiday quiz for May. Yes, we already did
It
May
is
Day.
going to be fun. It will be fun.
Have fun.
Have fun.
I'm joined by the wonderful, delightful Friar Tuck himself, Mr. Archeo Soup. Mark, thank you for being here yet again for more medieval seasonal torture.
Hooray.
Yeah, again.
I like it. I like it when they torture me. Yeah.
This is a very interesting one because these are holidays that are largely, I would say, still celebrated, but not in the same way that they used to be. And these holidays used to be actually quite big. And now many people say, I don't know what they are. And there are some people who believe that they started out as pagan holidays, and some people
They always do. They always do believe that.
Everything's pagan, Mark, don't you know?
Everything's pagan.
Everything's pagan. So Mark has his pen and paper handy.
Actually, I have a whiteboard.
Oh
Franklinator versus Soup.
God, the Franklin. I
have detailed files.
I must do my best to demolish Soup Towers today.
Yep.
So some of these holidays you probably have heard of, but they're not celebrated in the same way.
Okay.
So we will see. We will see how well you do, Mark. Also, many of these holidays are either still celebrated in country parts, maybe not so much in the city. More religious parts as well of Europe still celebrate these holidays, but others just don't.
Okay.
So question the first.
Mm-hmm.
Was the Pentecost a pagan holiday?
No.
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 Yeah, no.
Now, this is a question because there was a pagan Roman holiday that happened around this time called Ambarvalia, and it was an agricultural fertility festival. Some say to Ceres, some say to Bacchus, but this had absolutely nothing to do with Pentecost. Ambarvalia had public and private celebrations. The private celebrations were solemnized by, there was like a master of families accompanied by children and servants. And villages and farms of Rome, and people would process around the fields.
Okay.
Public was celebrated within the city boundaries, in which 12 fratres avarales walked around the head of a procession, and they went around lands, vineyards, blessing the lands. During the procession, prayers would be made to either Ceres, Bacchus, any god or goddess who was associated with that piece of land. And the Amber Valley Carmen was the prayer that was whispered as they went around. And I mean, we see this a lot though throughout European history. A lot of the people sang to their fields. They did wassailing on apple trees, right? They do apple wassail still. But people did go for, and so people do go for what's called wit walks. But these are processions through town and not in the field. So no, there's no between that and the Roman tradition. There is no connection at all.
Okay, and also I think I recently read that at least the story of Pentecost coincided with, is it the Festival of Tents?
We're getting there.
Oh.
We're getting there. We're getting there, and not tents, but we'll get there. Just as an aside, by the year 305, the church in West Roman Empire had already started to celebrate Pentecost on their own, and the inspiration of the Christ apostles like being blessed with the Holy Ghost. During the next 700 years, though, there were occasional glimpses caught of the development of like feasts and ceremonies. Some did believe that the Pentecost might have been based on this Roman holiday or other pagan holidays, because depending on the time of the year, May Day celebrations and Pentecost celebrations overlapped. So because Pentecost, just like Easter, is a movable feast. One following the other, obviously. But there's no pagan connection whatsoever.
Okay. Would it help if I just said yes and no?
No,
Do not speculate.
No, the colorful commentary is the best. I also love when you get mealy mouthed and you go, I don't want to give an answer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
Here,
go
so
all the way
now
back to
here,
high school. Yeah.
here is I think the question you were waiting for, Mark, which is
Okay.
number 2. Is Pentecost based on the Jewish holiday of Shavuot?
I don't think it's based on it. I think it coincided with it.
How?
Well, people have. We are told in whatever it is, with Acts, perhaps I don't know, where that the city was full of people, and I have friends who have suggested that people the city was full of Jerusalem, that is, was full of people because of Passover, but I had to remind them, no, it was a while later when people are gathered out in the room being depressed, going, oh,
Yeah,
oh.
not exactly
It's not,
so.
no.
No. So no, not
Oh,
exactly. So the Christian Pentecost happens 50
yeah.
days after Easter, technically 49. Whereas Shavuot happens 50 days after Passover. Again, the 49 days between being what's called the Omer. And the
Oh, so
Omer
we're 2 days out.
of which one?
Well, because didn't isn't the whole idea that you had Passover, the
So
guy get
Shavuot or Shavuos, if you're Ashkenazi, this year happens. I think it's June 12th. I think is the day.
oh,
I think so.
okay.
Because Passover or Pesach fell out very late this year because in the lunar calendar, the leap year they add a full month. They add Adar Bet, which is the second. They add the second Adar instead of like the solar calendar adds the day,
Mm-hmm.
but the lunar calendar adds the month.
Yeah.
And it's obviously at a different interval, not 4 years. So that's why Easter and Passover were like 2 months apart this year, where Easter was early and Passover was late.
Mm-hmm.
So in this specific year, so Pentecost happened I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Uh,
But you're talking about like Pentecost as an ongoing thing. I'm talking about like when Pentecost
oh,
apparently first happened.
oh,
Like,
oh, oh. I can't, I don't think we can answer that question because
oh,
um they were so they oh you so they were in Jerusalem for probably the offering of the Omer, which is what happened, which in ancient times the Omer was a sheaf of grain, and the
hmm,
count has its origins in the biblical command of offering the Omer or the sheaf offering. It's the first offering of the grain of the year,
right.
which was first offered on Passover, and then after which 49 days were counted, and then Shavuos was observed. Since the destruction of the temple, though, the sacrifices obviously are no longer being done. And the counting of the Omer is still performed, but you do it on a calendar. You don't give a sacrifice anymore. The Omer is also still counted by Samaritans, and Samaritan Israelis begin the counting of their Omer, though on a different day. It's the Shabbos or the Sabbath during Passover, not the first day of Passover, rather I should say the second day of Passover, which is the 16th of Nisan.
Right.
While Shavuot is a harvest holiday for the first fruits of the year, the first grains of the year. This holiday has been around since the Second Temple, and Pentecost is just the Greek meaning 50 days. And it's a much younger holiday. As we said, 305 is probably
Oh,
around the earliest. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So what was the festival of tents that you were, because the Shavuot is the festival of weeks.
Interesting. I could have sworn that I
Mhm.
had read somewhere that there was uh a big festival in Jerusalem that was known as the Festival of Tents at the time of the first Pentecost, and that's why people were in the city. Now
It could
we
be.
might
It
need to have
could.
a Google moment here, possibly.
It actually might be that's what it's called in the New Testament, but I would actually have to check like the Greek translation or something like that, because in
Okay,
the Hebrew is the festival of weeks, but it could be that maybe in the Greek it's different. I
interesting.
have this festival of tents. Let's go just for Mark.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
see if this is a thing.
This feels like a video referee moment. We're sort
But
of
pause.
yeah, yeah. Pause the
Oh,
game.
I know what you're talking about. You're
Okay.
talking about Sukkot, Sukkot.
Yes.
That's in October. So that is so Sukkot is it's the Feast of the Tabernacle. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Right.
Yeah.
Apologies.
But
Right.
yes, but I guess you would call it the Festival of Tents. So it's Sukkot or Sukkot if you're Sukkot. You essentially it's right after there's Rosh Hashanah. 10 days later is Yom Kippur. Then like 2 weeks later is Sukkot, which is essentially the kind of Thanksgiving holiday. It's the end. It's
Yeah.
the end. It's the end of the harvest season, and so people, yes, people do erect tents, and then you eat the last of your harvest in the tents. Yes, but that's a completely different time of year. Oh my gosh,
Uh,
I didn't know the English name for it.
Interesting. Sorry. So whatever, wherever I read this is completely wrong. It's completely the wrong time of year
Yeah,
for
it's the wrong
Sukkot.
time of year. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Okay. I'm going to try and find that
there's something
source.
called the Shalosh Regalim, which are so it's the three pilgrimages. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Hmm.
And so one of them is Passover, one of them is one of them is Shavuot, and then the other one is I believe it's Rosh Hashanah, which falls out just a couple of weeks before Sukkot. So that was when you would do the pilgrimage to Jerusalem.
Right.
And
Okay.
obviously nobody does that anymore, but it was considered. And so as we've talked about, Shavuot used to be a major holiday because it was one of the three pilgrimages. It
Hmm.
was huge.
Hmm.
Now, if you ask the average, I mean, I grew up learning about it, but if you ask the average person, do you know anything about Shavuot or Shavuos or festival weeks? Many of them don't. They know,
Yeah.
oh, it's a cheesecake holiday, and they know that it's a Yom Tov, meaning that you don't do work on that day, but that's about
Uh-huh.
it. They don't know anything about the history of it because it was a harvest festival, and that
Hmm.
sort of festival has been kind of divorced from the original meaning.
Do you think people tend to learn about festivals or know about festivals that will impact their work week?
Yes, I think that does have
So, for
something to do
example,
with
Yom
it.
Kippur.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
think I think it's also that because I guess in Western or Northern parlances, people look at their holidays as where can I take off rather
Hmm.
than what festivals are. When we were mostly agrarian society, it was very different because when you're an agrarian society, you have festivals all the time just to break up the different
The monotony.
the monotony of so sort of like the same thing that happens, with
Yeah.
Christmas is, Christmas is bang in the middle of the time where you can't do any work if you're a farmer. So
Yeah.
of course it makes sense, to clean out your stores and have a festival that lasts for 2 weeks during the coldest time of the year, just to give people a bit of cheer, people something to be
Hmm.
hopeful about and look forward to.
Hmm.
Whereas,
Hmm.
nowadays it's, oh, when can I go to Mallorca?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up anyway.
Oh my
Apologies
goodness. I
for
can't believe I
yes,
didn't know the English name for Shavuot is the Festival of Tents, because I know because we translate it as the Feast of the Tabernacle.
which is a
But
tent. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize that
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
the I don't know if it's King James, because I never learned King
Maybe.
James because the translation is very inaccurate.
Okay.
But I didn't realize that that's what that holiday is translated as. I feel oh, it's funny. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll mark that down as like, half a point each for that whole ramble. Okay. Okay. So have you got your next question, Vinny?
yes.
Yeah.
Why is Whitsun called that?
Whitsun.
Why is the festival of Whitsun called Whitsun?
Um, because 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 okay, because you see it, you see the sun at its quittest.
And and what does wit mean in this sense, Mark? What does it mean? If we're
uh
seeing the sun at its wittest?
is it quittest? Well, it's see, now this is the things depends on your school of thought. So
Okay.
some people will take it very literally and think it's at its palest or whitest, but they obviously are are incorrect, I guess. And other people think it's just the time when you deploy delaying tactics and and you hope to goodness that that you learn something.
No,
Okay, yeah,
we have no idea.
yeah.
Whitsun, for those who don't know, is the I suppose British name for the Feast of Pentecost.
Right.
And we have no idea how this got to be named this in this part of the world. There are some guesses, like it being a, you were so close with your, you were so close. There is some people think it's a contraction of White Sunday,
Okay.
or it having to do with the Old English word whit.
Hmm.
But there are no Saxon holidays recorded at this time in Bede.
Right.
But ultimately, we just don't know. Some believe it's because this was a popular day to do baptisms, and everybody would be wearing white clothing.
Okay.
Our good buddy Professor Ronald Hutton says by the 11th century, Pentecost had already acquired its enduring English nickname of Whit Sunday or Whitsun, which has baffled scholars ever since. The most likely explanation, possibly, is that this festival was, as we said, notable for baptisms, and white was the customary color for baptismal robes. Medieval writers make their own guesses. This 14th century monk John Mark suggests that the name came from the giving of wit to disciples of the Holy Ghost. Wit meaning the intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Walter William Scape noted that the Anglo-Saxon word wit also appears in the Icelandic. Please excuse me for my ancient Icelandic. Fita sunudagir.
Oh,
I,
disgusting.
I apologize if that was not
Terrible.
correct.
Terrible.
But in the English, the feast is called Pentecost after until after the Norman conquest, when suddenly wit began to be confused with wit or understanding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
according to Roud's English Year, Whitsun has many customs and superstitions, none of them linked to religious aspects of the holiday at all. As the first holiday of summer, Whitsun was one of the favorite times of the year in the traditional calendar, and Whitsunday, or the entire week, indeed, was a time of celebration. It took the form of fetes, fairs, pageants, parades. Whitsun ales was a big thing. Morris dancing was a big thing in the south of England. Whit walks,
Hmm.
club days, and wakes in the north. Poster advertising Whitsun festivities in Sunbury, Middlesex, 1778, list the following attractions.
Hmm.
On Whit Monday in the morning will be a punting match. The first boat that comes to receive a guinea, that's nice. In the
Yeah.
afternoon, a gold-laced hat worth 30 shillings to be cudgeled for on Whit Tuesday in the morning. A fine Holland smock and ribbons to be run for by girls and young women. And in the afternoon, 6 pairs of buckskin gloves to be wrestled for. 1778.
By
Uh,
by who? Who's getting arrested for them?
it doesn't say
Everyone.
actually, it says in the afternoon, 6 pairs of buckskin gloves to be wrestled for.
Okay.
I suppose anybody could do it. Uh, who knows?
Ooh.
It's and as well in 1485, Mallory's Mort obviously the death of Arthur, has the Knights of the Round Table witness a divine vision of the Holy Grail on Whit Sunday, prompting their quest
Ah.
to find the true location. Whitsun was the second most important holiday of the year after Easter for a very long time. And now, no.
No. No.
Have you ever heard of it, Mark?
I I have. I actually have heard the word Whitsun. Um, but oddly enough, I was in my stalling. I was actually going to say when you did receive some sort of, cutting pun or something from the sun. So there was a witty element going to be in there. But no, that's interesting. That not quite knowing where it comes from, and I suppose uh the fact that people are sort of searching for that meaning, but also as well indicate later on indicating that this idea of it being linked with the beginning of a search for the Grail is curious. Although I'm curious, where
Mm.
would you start if you were looking for something like the Grail? Because if you think about it, uh, that sort of story has to be written really from the end, doesn't it? Back, you need to have a sense of where
Well, yeah, it
everything's
was.
going.
So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, Um,
But like the point is, no one knows. So who do you ask?
I know. I know that the Grail was originally a dish. It was a plate. It wasn't a cup.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I know that that story was made up in France, and
Uh-huh.
it was really all about piety and chastity.
Yeah.
And we know who did find it, we know who did get it, and we know
Yeah.
who did ascend to heaven in that story. So it is findable, but really, the Grail is within you.
Ah, the Grail was the friends we made along the
Well,
way.
the Grail was the
Ah.
Jesus that Galahad. uh, but that's really what it is. It's a
Okay.
symbol. It's the symbol of the Grail is really a symbol of piety and chastity, and the whole point
Right.
of it is that uh, it's an eternal quest that can never be perfected. That's the whole point.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
really want to find the Grail, you have to look in your
Deep
heart.
inside.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And drop all those the bad habits, seducing Guinevere, this kind of thing. Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
can never get there, Mark. We can never get there. It's too
No.
late for us. We're too old. We're old sinners, and
Yeah.
that's why the young, chaste one was the one who found it.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay, okay, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah. So if you really want to start looking for the Grail, you have to look within. Thanks, Mallory. Weird chase jerk.
Okay, okay. I shall
I had
contemplate
a
that.
moment where somebody asked me, they're like, "Oh, what's the historicity of the Grail?" And I went, "There is none. I'm sorry. It was
Mm.
a complete fabrication." And they just had a moment where they went, "What do you mean? Like, there's no actual thing that it was based on?" I
Yeah.
said,
Well,
"No."
of course, there's the Grail that's just over my shoulder there.
Yeah,
You know, I think
exactly.
Spielberg did a fantastic job with that Grail.
But I love how simple it is. I think it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
So speaking of ridiculous things, question third: Is cheese rolling around Whitsun an ancient pagan practice?
No.
Very good.
Yeah.
But dairy offerings in general might be.
Okay.
The Ferie Latinae was an ancient Roman spring festival. Each Latin city sent a representative and offerings such as sheep, cheese, or other pastoral products. The presiding Roman consul offered a libation of milk and conducted the sacrifice of a pure white heifer that had never been yoked. The flesh was burnt and eaten as part of a communal meal of sacrament, and as part of the festivities, figurines called oscilla were hung from trees, and it continued to be held until 3rd century AD. Some people claim that they used to throw the first cheese of the year into the fields for luck at the beginning of the harvest season, but there's no evidence for this whatsoever.
Actually, why would you waste cheese?
Yeah, I do
What
think
sort
it's a
of
bit.
sadist does that?
A side story. I was officiating a wedding yesterday, and the wedding had the correct amount of cheese. There was little balls of cheese for
Hmm.
the hors d'oeuvres. There was crunchy cheese on top of the salad, and then at dinner everybody got their own baked gooey brie. I went,
Oh,
this is exactly the correct amount of cheese. All the
yeah,
food
that's
groups
good.
were covered.
That's
We
good.
had crispy gooey and hard cheese as well.
Do you know
Um,
we were at a few years ago now. We were at a family wedding, and it was
mhm,
just across the border in Ireland, and that is to say, just across the Northern Irish border.
mhm.
And there was a moment when my brother-in-law turned to me and obviously to his sister, my lovely wife, and just said, "Do you know we don't do ourselves any favors, do we?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, look at how many different types of potato are on this table." Yeah, there was chips, there was mash, there was roasties, there was like curly fries. It was all there.
These are all the
Um,
good food groups. And last
yeah,
night we had there was a
they'd been
marvelous
crisped as well.
yeah, why
Yeah.
not? So they did have little roasted potato skewers for the hors d'oeuvres. Then as part of the dinner, they did have little roasted potatoes as well. And then they had midnight poutine. So they had fries
Ooh,
at
nice.
midnight.
Oh yes, yeah, actually, yeah, yeah. There had been not poutine, but there was
Gravy chips.
potato dauphinoise, is that?
What is it
You know,
called,
like
Mark?
cheese and sliced potato.
Oh, I never heard this one.
Have you not heard about this? I think it's called potato dauphinoise.
Uh-oh.
It's just like a tent thing. I don't know what I'm.
Is it an Irish thing?
No, 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 no. I think it might be a British thing that we pretend is French,
That makes
but
sense.
I think, but I think it might be a dish that was potentially cooked for the Dauphin,
Oh,
the heir to
Dauphin,
the
the prince.
throne
Okay.
in France. Yeah.
And how do you spell it?
Well, Dauphin
Right.
Inoire,
Ire. Wow.
something like that.
Oh, I've never heard of that. Yeah, it
No,
must be if it is French, indeed, it must be an old French thing, but we don't have it over here, no.
okay.
We
I'm not
we do
imagining.
get
I don't
other
think I'm
things
imagining it.
like totière and all that stuff, but we definitely don't get no different. I'm definitely gonna have to because if it's a meal of just potatoes and milk, I'm all in for
Yeah,
that. That's
it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
is it like
Yeah.
scalloped potatoes? Is that what it is?
Uh, Thinly sliced and layered such that they're slightly overlapping all the way around. I think you start on the bottom of the dish, you work your way up, fill the whole thing with creamy, cheesy,
Ooh.
garlicky, herby goodness, and then bake it. And then you end up with this sort of crispy on top, gooey in the middle,
Mm.
layered potato thing.
Oh, okay. Dauphinoise.
Different was, sorry.
Dauphinoise. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's scalloped potatoes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Sounds good. It looks gorgeous. So sounds gorgeous.
So well, it was a tent thing. Yet again, I was just a little, I was just over
You
there.
can
Just
have a point for that one, Mark. Yeah. Yes.
oh, thank you.
Dauphinoise. One thing I will say, speaking of scalloped potatoes, that many of these little end of May holidays have is in early June celebrations. There's something honoring dairy usually.
Hmm.
And so dairy enjoyment seems to be just in general seems to be part of this time of the year, whether it be cream or for like leaving out cream for the fairies in May or cheesecake on Shavuot. It just there seems to be a thing about dairy this time of the year.
Okay.
So in conjunction, Mark, how did cheese rolling become part of Whit Monday?
Oh, I can't quite remember, but there's a thing. Like I know that a couple of years ago, someone horribly broke their leg on the cheese roll.
Oh,
Yeah, because
do you know
it's
where it
very
is?
steep. I've forgotten exactly where it is, but I've
Okay.
seen. You always see pictures of the every year. It's on the news. You know, the hill. It's a hill that's pot marked with all sorts of wonderful little holes to trap your ankle in and snap. You wouldn't catch me doing it, but I I seem to recall. I might be wrong. It was in lieu of a football match. So
Oh,
instead of
that's an
playing
interesting
football,
theory. I've never
they got
heard this
together and
one.
rolled a cheese. I might be wrong about that though.
That's very interesting. So,
Hmm.
the no one really exactly knows,
Oh,
but
okay.
people do have theories, and there are a few guesses. Most credible of which is in Roud, this in his English year, who says that the cheese rolling race on Cooper's Hill is all that remains of the famous Cooper's Hill Wake, which was once held on top of the hill every Whit Monday and included many other standard features of the annual gathering, such as wrestling, shin kicking,
Oh
ankle
yeah.
breaking, I guess,
Yeah.
really.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Shin kicking, gurning, the classic gurning. You ever, yeah,
That
so good, amazing. Smock
was a
races.
good gun, by the way. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I try to get my lip all the way up to my nose. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But they even had a maypole as well on Whit Sunday,
Okay.
and there was
Hmm.
plenty to eat and drink. The cheese rolling itself, far from being an ancient ritual, is
Mm.
therefore simply the sole survivor of an activity that routinely took place at fairs, wakes up and down the country, providing that they had like a suitable hill to do this nearby. In 1826 is the first description that we have of this specific event, though it might have started earlier. Historical
Hmm.
documents referring to the contest include a message written to a town crier in his description in Folklore Journal in 1912 that describes a free-for-all that seemingly is most unchanged since in the century since the words were written down. It says,
Hmm.
Master of Ceremonies, Mr. W. Brooks, who has officiated in this capacity for over 30 years, appeared wearing, as usual, a brown top hat, which his parents won in a dancing competition many years ago, with a chemise over his coat. He stood by the maypole and repeatedly called to the crowd from the alley down the slope. The course being clear, the vicar opened the ball by sending the first cheese, a disc of wood wrapped in pink paper.
Oh,
Yeah,
not
so
cheese then.
not real cheese. This one was a
Oh,
disc of wood wrapped in pink paper, rolling down the hill. Helter Skelter ran 9 young men after it, and most of them pitch-poled.
well, yes.
The first to secure the disc stopped at the bottom by a hedge, had to trudge uphill again, and there was exchange for the prize cheese. So that's what would happen. You would roll the cheese, the fake cheese down the hill.
Yeah. So
You
it's like
would
a
grab it,
token.
bring it back up the hill, and you would get a
Yeah.
big cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while this event began on Whit Monday, it's now the last Monday in May.
Okay. Okay. What came to mind there was the idea that you get to the bottom and you discover it's not cheese. At which point in my head I just heard this sort of Cardiff-based person just saying, "You'd be gutted, wouldn't you?" And the only other place I've ever heard someone say that in a weird context like that, obviously people say it all the time across Wales, um, was I remember, was it a friend had gone to at university, a friend had gone to like a Christian union
Mhm.
and meeting because they'd been invited and turned up, and there's this person at the front who wasn't much older than them, probably in the third year or whatever, and he was just saying, just imagine if life was nothing but just, you know, sex and drinking, you'd be gutted, wouldn't you? And I just like, my friend was like, no, what's, I don't know who. Is anyone? Is everyone? Is everyone okay? What's going on? And so yeah, he didn't go back again. But he just relayed this like, you'd be gutted, wouldn't you? For just sex and drinking. And I was like, well, no, not really. No, no. Maybe the library a little bit as well. You know.
Or 3 types of cheese at every meal. That would be that's
Mm.
fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You'd be gutted if life was a disc of wood. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a cheese.
Yeah, it has to be a cheese. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Okay.
So last question, Mark.
Oh, last. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's we this one's a short one. So,
Yeah.
what is a WAP?
Now, I didn't think you'd ever take us there, Michelle, and I'm frankly disappointed. A WAP. Uh, is
I
it a
actually
pa
I hmm?
is it a paddle of some sort?
Oh, you're so close.
Oh,
You're
okay.
so
Is
close.
it something that do you sort of? Is it like for I don't know? ah, Is it a part of a game, or is it sort of to do with like blessing someone in some way, like hitting them? I'm
Yes,
just
yes, it is. It's a
yes. Oh
blessing.
wow.
Okay, so the original sense of the word WAP is
Yeah.
not the one we know today. Uh, as yes, I had a video of Fujisan singing. There's some cheese in this house. There's some cheese in this den. The Randik WAP is the
Yeah.
local name for Gloucester's annual festival,
Okay.
which had the hashtag this year of WAP24, which I laughed so hard. It's great. I love it.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And WAP comes from the Middle English wapen, uh,
Okay.
uh, which means to throw or to strike or to blow in
Yeah.
gusts. On the first Sunday of May, 3 double Gloucester cheeses are honored and blessed during the spring service. Blessed is the cheese.
Okay. Wow.
The, che- the,
Wow.
the cheeses are then rolled winder shins anti-clockwise around the cheese yard. One is broken up and eaten on that day, and the 2 others are saved for predicting the coming growing season
Oh, of course.
by
Yes.
by the Queen or the Mayor of the rolling down the hill, down the well lease 3 times, uh, each following Saturday or WAP day.
Interesting. Wow. Um, you'd be gutted, wouldn't you? No, no, no. So the
I'm absolutely shattered.
indeed. Oh, it's so
I'm
tiring.
absolutely shattered.
Yeah. WAP 24. The
WAP 20
WAPening.
hashtag WAP
Yeah.
24.
Yeah. the happening. Okay, so
That's
so my
perfect,
thought,
actually.
my thought process there, genuinely, I think it must come from the back of my mind, having, obviously I have a vague idea of Anglo-Saxon dialect. It just sounded right.
Yeah,
And this is something you've talked about, isn't it? How if you ask people to come up with a word for something, quite often that word will have the characteristics of real words that relate to that thing.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking like whap as in wallop or whack or, you know, sort of, I don't know, smack or something.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
So
that was short and sweet.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
there were other prominent festivals around this time. There was also St. Dunstan's Day. There was also like what's called the Franklin Days, no relation, which was 3 days, starting on St. Dunstan's Day, which I think was May 19th.
Hmm.
But we have no idea why these days were called this. Again, it was just like simple festival fair that went on. Trinity Sunday as well, I think,
Hmm.
which is this Sunday, and Corpus Christi. But all of these are nowadays, they're just liturgical days, and we
Yeah.
don't celebrate them anymore. Really, we don't. You can go to church and and there will be ceremony there, but there's no public feast day.
No.
The Whitsun, as we said, or Pentecost, used to be the second most important holiday after Easter in medieval times. In the late 13th and 14th centuries, according to this Book of Medieval Seasons, these holidays came in part of the mystery cycles, and a wide range of dramatic and elaborate performances took place on or after these feasts, such as the famous ones in York and Chester. These holidays often gave regular folk a chance at the Eucharist as well, because many people don't realize that even poor people couldn't get that. It was
No.
really only like the priest or vicar that did it, and you were
Mm.
just blessed by association. Whereas
Mm.
during these times, it was a time for poor people to actually get a chance to have it.
Mm.
But that's it. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, because of, and just like you said in the beginning, because of things, work weeks, 9 to 5s, people having holidays at different times, most of these holidays are now just largely forgotten because we don't get
Yeah.
off for them.
No. No. Um, it's interesting that what you just say there about poor people and clergy, because in that sense, that's what I've always understood to be one of the purposes for the word vicar as a priest in the Church of England, is being a vicarious, as it were, connection or representative with whatever, with the church, with something holy on behalf of
The parish, yeah.
either the people in the parish or going in the other direction. So the Pope is sometimes called the Vicar of Christ, isn't he? So in that sense, he is a vicarious representation of Christ to the planet.
Man, they stealing all the good cookies.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Yeah.
Keep it all. That's fine. They can have the cookies. We get the cheese.
Yeah.
They can have their wafers. We'll have the WAP.
I'm gonna whack myself in the face. Yeah.
So
Um.
how'd you do, Mark? How'd you do?
Well, let's see. One,
Carry the 5.
five, five to Soup Towers, and a total of three to the Franklinator.
Oh, and so as your gift,
Yeah.
Mark, you get the gift of
Extra reading.
further reading.
Woo!
This is our special further reading book today. This is the Medieval Book of Seasons by Mary Collins and Virginia Davis. And they do have a whole chapter on these holidays. Very nice, very nice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
On these holidays and specific and different customs that used to be kept in medieval times around this time of the year, and as well Roud's The English Year. I recommend reading it because he actually catalogs a lot of these receipts, talking
Hmm.
about festivals and where they came from and who was responsible, etc. So those are your two further reading things for today. So that's our quiz. We'll be back though, I guess around the 23rd for our Midsummer St. John's
Cool.
quiz.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Will
Also,
we be joining a cult?
I mean, we could, but I wouldn't really bear any construction because Did people really celebrate the summer solstice, Mark? We'll find out.
All
We'll
right.
find out.
It's a good film. It's a good film.
It is, but I mean, well, I love that film. I just,
Oh, sorry. Will this also involve a little bit of Wicker Man?
we are gonna. Well, we talked about the Wicker Man for May Day.
Oh, we did.
We
Yeah.
did,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember what we said about the Wicker Man?
That it's the most historically accurate footage of British
Yes,
cinema in the past 60
the most
years.
historically accurate hoax, yes, ever. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there was no. For those who don't know, there is no evidence for a Wicker Man
No.
ever.
No.
It was probably propaganda made up by the Romans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, because the movie is super cool,
It is.
is probably one of the best folk horror films of all time. But
Yeah.
no, no, we're not going to talk about. Oh, I mean, we could talk about Midsummer, at the movie as part of Midsummer, and
True.
we will actually mention a little bit of it when we talk about Litha, but yeah, we will get onto that around the 21st or 23rd, depending on when you think Midsummer is. Winky wink. So get your pens and everything ready now. Anyway, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for playing. Thank you for being here. I hope you had a good time.
I did have a good time. Thank you. I suppose what question for me and the folks at home?
Yes.
Midsummer, are we talking about this as a depends on what you think? Is it like a mathematical thing, or is it a lunar calendrical thing? Like,
What do
can we
you
try and figure it out
what
between
do you
now and then?
mean lunar calendar? If it's summer solstice,
Oh,
what do you mean?
that's a good point. Yeah.
But what do you mean lunar calendar?
Well,
What do you
is
mean?
it? I suppose I'm just wondering, like, you know, how are we reckoning it? How are we
So
calculate? How can we calculate it? Possibly.
I will ask you, Mr. Archaeologist, I will ask you this question. What does what do we think Stonehenge points to? Or rather, I should say, what are the burials in Stonehenge based on?
Interesting. Okay, fine. I will go away and confirm that because I don't want to say anything stupid right now about that. And we can talk about this next time. Yeah.
I love it. Sliding away. It's perfect.